Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 538 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is urgency. Our quote of the day comes to us from H. Jackson Brown, Jr. You must take action now that will move you towards your goals. Develop a sense of urgency in your life. As we are heading into the summer months, and if you are looking for a quick and fun read that is full of impactful information you can apply today, I would really appreciate if you grabbed a copy of our new book, Process Before Results. You can head on over to Amazon to pick up yours, and I truly appreciate your support. I met our guest today on social media, and we immediately connected as we have many friends in common. I began following Ted Rath, and I grabbed a copy of his book, which I really enjoyed. He shares a lot of key information with us today, so make sure you get ready to take some notes. I know you will enjoy today's episode. Ted, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Chris, thanks for allowing me to be here, man. Humbled and honored, and really love the stuff that you're doing, so I'm excited to dive into this.
I appreciate it. We got a chance to talk a couple minutes before we went live, and I think a lot of our fundamental things that we coach and teach are similar. I don't want to mislead our listeners to think that I'm at your level of what you do, but I think the foundation in mental performance, strength and conditioning, and coaching in all aspects, all different sports, are relatively similar. And first question I ask every guest, and I know the answer, but I have to ask it as well to you, is are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
That's my goal every single day, Chris. So let's go do it together.
So I think I know the story you're going to share, but I don't want to say it in case it's not. But the second question I ask each guest is for their no-quit story. And that's a time either in their personal or professional life where they could have given up or given in, but they didn't. So I want to obviously give you that opportunity to share yours.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question, Chris. And there's a few that pop into mind. There's one main one. And it's funny enough because I'm going to err on the side of saying I was too young and too naive to know that it was that moment. Because looking back now, I actually enjoy thinking about it. But there was a time I was in a college setting and I was working at my alma mater, the University of Toledo, and I had been fortunate to work my way up. I was a graduate assistant for only 1 year, and then I got promoted to a full-time job. I'm 22, 23 years old, and I'm coaching, in effect, my former college mates. I was a player there. I played football. So now I'm an authoritative figure. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I'm overseeing all the Olympic sports. I have GAs. I have graduate assistants. So I'm in a leadership role. I have an opportunity to go to the NFL with the Detroit Lions, who was my hometown team. I grew up in the state of Michigan, right by the Ohio border. This was the team that my whole family rooted for, kind of a cool opportunity. The only caveat was the job was basically a limited and a restricted hours and restricted earning job. So that first year, I chose to take on this role, but that first year I made $10,000 and I maxed out my entire salary within the first few months because the hours in the NFL are crazy, Chris, as you can imagine. So I got to the point where I literally did not receive a paycheck from August all the way through February until I got promoted there with the Lions. So $0 coming in. I'm, living with my wife. We're trying to figure out life and bills and all that stuff. And you leave a full-time job with medical, with healthcare, with all those things. And then you dive into it. And then on top of that, we were living in Toledo. So the Allen Park, Michigan facility where the Lions trained was about an hour and 10 minutes away. So at one point I'm driving from Toledo. I'm getting up at about 3 a.m, driving the hour plus up to Allen Park, working a full NFL calendar day. Then I'm starting odds and ends jobs to make money. So I started high school strength and conditioning jobs. So I'm driving to Ann Arbor after that, 40, 45 minutes, then all the way back down to Toledo. And I'm doing it repetitively every single day, not thinking twice. Once again, that naive personality and that younger version of myself. And I still don't know anything. I'm still young and naive. But Chris, I love that. I look back on that moment and it wasn't just a day to day. It wasn't just that month or that 6 months, that year. it was every single day was a grind. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was setting up my future success and my future outcomes just by showing up consistently and repetitively and staying aggressive after the work. And I think that's one thing that's really key for everyone to remember. You have to stay urgent. You have to stay aggressive when you're going after your goals, but you have to do it in the moment and you have to do that consistently.
I think the fact that we all go through challenging times, and not to put them all in the same category, but we don't rarely know exactly what this lesson or multiple lessons are going to be. But if you look at your career and where you are today working in the NFL, obviously you didn't know then how important those drives are going to be and those early hours and long days, but it laid the foundation for the success you have today. And the one thing that I don't like with podcasts or even introductions is when a guest or a host or an announcer reads like a 9-paragraph biography for somebody. So I wanted to just give you a quick chance in your own words to introduce yourselves to our listeners who maybe don't know who you are and what you do today.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chris. Long story short, I'll give you the synopsis. I'm a small town kid. I grew up in Dundee, Michigan. I graduated with around 80 kids in my high school graduating class. Met my high school sweetheart there, still married to her. We have 3 beautiful children. And that was the foundation. I grew up in a small rural farm town community and got the value of hard work, not just through that, but through my parents. Thank God they're both still alive and they're still married, high school sweethearts. So got to grow up in that foundation, and it led me on the path to sports. And then I played college athletics. I played at the University of Toledo Division I football program. And I got really fortunate. I got into strength and conditioning right after that, was a graduate assistant, worked full-time there, and then got in the NFL. I'm in my 17th NFL offseason. I've been with 5 teams, been to the Super Bowl with a couple different teams. And throughout that process, Chris, I've kind of found I've had a lot of people like yourself who have had great impacts on me, to where the mental side, the mindset, the approach that we can attack, regardless of the industry you're in. If you're in professional sports, business, any industry, anything that you do, mindset is a mandatory and a prerequisite to success. So for me, having that positive mindset, but also having that urgent mindset to where you are willing to go do the work, that's something that led me to writing a book. And that's something I've done recently within the last year. I've done speaking, I've done some keynote stuff, and, I've done some consulting work. But those are things that bring me energy. Chris, when we talk about leadership development and developing people on an individual and a team structured base, I love that because that's the process. The reward is the work. It's not the Super Bowl trophy. It's not these things at the end of the line. It's not the sales. It's not the quarterly marks that you're hitting, the projections, all those things. It's the work. When you find that, you have found congruence, and that's where you kind of mesh your passions with your skill sets. And I think that's what I'm really passionate about. That's why I love having conversations with people like you that are doing the same thing.
That is such a interesting way you started, saying your 17th year and your 5th team. And, you look back at going back to the way you answered that second question is, you're working and you basically maxed out your contract. But if someone said to you then, fast forward, obviously you would have, wanted it to happen to you, but it's those things that people don't see behind the scenes. And I think you touched on something that for me is been really powerful, but the mindset perspective, and having played 2 sports myself in college and having coached college sports and the work I get to do now, and I want to emphasize the get to because I'm extremely grateful for it, but the mindset wasn't even remotely on the radar back when I was in college. Now, I want to preface that in no way am I talking about, going up to school uphill both ways in the snow and those type of things. But my point is, it's become such a powerful part, and you said it best, of whether it's business, whether it's sports, whether you're a high school student studying for different tests trying to get into college, or you're just trying to be a better person or a better individual. The mindset part is so important. But for me, and I want to get your 2 cents on this, it hasn't been, and for me, up until the last few years when I really have seen it in the media to the extent it is today. Back in the years, I'd hear a couple things, you'd hear things here and there, but it was only, I think, maybe the last 5, 6, 7 years where it's become what it is today.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that, Chris, because as you look at it, the same thing. I get to do what I do on a daily basis. I'm very blessed and very fortunate. I'm grateful for the opportunities we get. With that, I've met some really cool people. I've met, people like John Gordon, who's a personal friend of mine, another guy who's a mental performance coach, Ben Newman, incredible author and speaker and everything that they get to do. And they talk about something you hit on, all those years where you're doing the work and you're not thinking about it, you're not projecting out 17 years, 20 years down the line. Ben Newman calls it unrequired work. It's the work that no one else is willing to do and no one else will even talk about or think about because it's so uncomfortable. But when you live in the moment and you live through the process, you're willing to dive into that work, because if your challenge to yourself, your opportunity is to maximize your day and optimize your day and have a positive influence on someone every single day, Chris, I guarantee in 10 years, you're going to be able to look back and take a peek and say, I impacted people every single day. And it's not just one person, it's going to be hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions. So when you look at that impact, man, why can't you get passionate about what we do now? But I'm with you. It's changed. People are talking about it more. It's allowed to be talked about, in cultures and business cultures, professional sports settings. We can talk about mindset and we can talk about the fact that you go through challenging days. You might have had a bad game. You might have had a bad quarter. You might not have hit your sales numbers. All those things are real world problems. And it doesn't mean that everything's peachy and everything's sunny. Now, however, you have an opportunity and you have a choice. When you do look at that, maybe you're in the middle of adversity, maybe you just had a great quarter and you're crushing life. Both people have the same opportunity. They can look at an opportunity or they can look at an obstacle. So when you hit that adverse moment, are you seeing the opportunity or are you just seeing the obstacle? Don't look at the rock in the road. Look at the ways around it. You can climb around it. You can move the boulder. You can shift it. You can find strategies that will help you turn that into a productive part of your story and of your life.
It reminds me that, and I'm pretty sure you've heard of this too, but there's the saying that people are either coming out of a storm, just having come out of it, coming out of a storm, about to go into a storm, or they're currently in a storm. And I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, oh, it's kind of, and I don't like to use the word negative, but I said that's a kind of a negative way to approach it. But then I realized that whether you want to use storm, challenge, obstacle, valley, whatever your word of choice or phrase is. But I look at it now that life is full of curveballs. And, I don't like saying negative or that, being a failure. I look at failures as opposed to failure. But I think it hits into, a lot of what you do, because being in your industry in the NFL, 17 weeks of just nonstop, literally and figuratively, guys are lining up against each other, and basically it's like a boxing match with helmets on. And I think some people that don't realize that it's the same thing for any walk of life. You could be in sales, you could be in, any different space, but it just, what you said really hit me, and it reminded me of that storm saying, because I think it's so true, and you still can go through them with a positive approach.
Yeah, it's still your choice. And I think that's the best thing about it. It obviously, the NFL takes an incredible level of mental and physical toughness as full players, staff, everyone. If you're in this business, to your point, Chris, when you hit the line in July, you have a 7-month season. We don't get days off in that stretch. You're here every day, all day, and it's an incredible sacrifice. You got to be mentally tough. You have to have a family structure that's mentally tough. You have to have all these things spinning in life in conjunction, and that's why I really don't like using the word balance. It's not a balance. We don't live balanced lives. I've never had a day where it's been perfectly 50-50. We call it integration. I integrate my home life with my work life and vice versa, and everything else that we do, the people that you help on a daily basis, your podcast, your speaking, everything else you're doing, Chris, has to integrate within itself. And that's the ecosystem that we live in. And when you optimize all those things, it doesn't mean that they're all working smoothly. One might be in the middle of a storm. The other one might have just came out of a storm, but we integrate all those aspects of our lives. And that's how we just continue to grow, because you focus on that process at a one day at a time approach. And then that's how the long-term objectives typically get checked off, because you focus on that one day at a time.
I too do not like that work-life balance. And the famous quote, find something you love to do and you'll never work a day in your life. I really personally don't like that quote, because I think it puts out that idea that, if you find something you love, it's not going to be work and it's not going to be hard and it's going to be quote unquote easy. And I love what I do. And I think I can speak for you. I think you love what you do, but I would say that I work my butt off, and I've never titled it as I'll never work a day in my life, because I love what I do. It's just I'm fortunate, and going back to what you and I said before is the get to part, but I still work my butt off. And I think that goes hand in hand with the work-life balance piece.
I'm glad you said that, Chris, man. Thanks for saying that because I agree with you 100%. And I've stopped saying that, you never work a day. I've worked my butt off to get to this point, and I'm going to work my butt off even harder to keep going. But I always say this, it beats having a real job. I don't feel like I'm coming into somewhere with dread every day. I'm very, very fortunate to get to what I do. But you want to try this for a day? Go ahead, come on, try to keep up. If you got 14, 16 hours in the tank and you can keep my pace and my urgency all through that day, God bless you, because this is a grind every single day. There are hard days, man. There are challenges, and it's challenges on the other end too, like being away from the family and some of those things that you do have to integrate. But every day is a challenge. But also, it's so rewarding, Chris. And I'm probably speaking for you too, man. The work is the reward, because when you put your mind to something, you grind your butt off, and then you see those outcomes. Man, how good of a feeling is that?
No, I appreciate you touching that, because it's something that hits home to me, especially working with athletes and coaches myself. A lot of people on the outside have that view of like, oh, they're lucky that they get to do that. And to your point, yes, I do feel that I'm very fortunate and lucky in many ways, but I do feel that, and I try to earn it every single day. And I think that that's the little bit of the misconnect when it comes to, find something you love to do and you never work a day in your life. Got to touch on your book, as you briefly touched on it before. That's one of the reasons why we are speaking today, but it's titled Beyond Comfort. And I've heard you and I've listened to you talk about this, but your reasoning behind that is awesome. So if you could just give us your 2 cents on that, because I think it's a really cool title. Now that I've heard you talk about it, I think it's even better title.
Yeah, the first thing that I'll say is I've been, I guess, active on social media for a little over a year, right at a year now. It was very uncomfortable for me, Chris. It was one of those things I did not like prior to that. I was very uncomfortable doing it. I felt bad. I felt like ego, who wants to post about themselves and all the things. And I'm just being fully transparent. I'll be vulnerable. I didn't like it. And then going through the process, for me, going beyond my personal comfort level, since that time, if I had to fast forward, Chris, the amount of people that have reached out to me and said, your words right now helped me. And I'm not going to get into some of the deeper stuff that I've had people reach out and say where it's tremendously helped them in whatever avenue in life they're at. Maybe it's a bit of adversity. Maybe it's a significant loss. Maybe it's something going on that's horrendous to even think about. But those people said it helped them in those moments. That's why you do it. And like you said, your impact is to create positive change for someone every single day. If I have to get beyond my comfort and feeling silly or feeling stupid about posting something, I have no problem doing that if I know it's going to help someone else, Chris, because I wish more people did that for me, and I wish more people did that in this world. And I know there's a lot of people doing that, and that's what we got to continue down that path. So get beyond your own comfort zone. Sometimes have the tough conversation, reach out, say I love you, give someone a pat on the back that needs it. Lift somebody up. If that's uncomfortable for you, good. Get beyond your comfort zone and go do it, because the positive impact is going to outweigh your discomfort by a great margin.
The word comfort, to me, it's such a simple word and concept, but to me, it goes back to when we were talking about is, work-life balance and, find something you love to do, you'll never work again. And I think it's being comfortable is what we all want to. It goes back to the Stone Age, and where Neanderthals, where you didn't want to be attacked by a dinosaur or something like that. You wanted to be comfortable. You wanted to have shelter, a fire, and it's the same thing today. Is we want to be comfortable, but the only way to get to that next level, whatever your level is, and I want to be clear, everybody should define their own level of what they want to go for, but the concept of, you have to get outside your comfort zone. We all talk about it. We all post about it. But a question for you, for one of our listeners maybe listening right now, and they're struggling getting outside of that comfort zone. They've listened to your stuff. They've listened to maybe some of John's stuff or Ben Newman's things, and they're still not doing it. Is there one thing or a piece of advice that you have maybe that could help somebody get outside of their comfort zone and take that first step?
Yeah, really good question again, Chris. I think the one thing you need to do is you need to snap into whatever your word is, your go-to word. So this is something I've used personally. And if you read the book, I talk about the toe test and urgency of getting out of bed in the morning. So for me, that trigger word, I have a trigger word. It's urgent. So when I'm dreading doing something, this is a simple example. When I don't want to get up at 3:30 in the morning, but I know I need to get in and get my work done so that I can pour into other people. Urgent. That's the word that triggers into my mind. It's the same thing. If we have a cold weather game and we play in Chicago and it's January and it's 3 degrees outside, I'm going to wear short sleeves. Why? Because number one, we have players that do it. I'm going to ride with them. I'm going to show them that, hey, I'm here with you. It's very uncomfortable, but in the back of my mind, Chris, I don't want to do it. So then urgent, urgent, just go do the action. When there's things that you know you need to do. So if you can't get out of bed in the morning, you hit snooze 3 times, move your phone across the room and apply urgency to your action. You have to do that urgently though, because if you don't, it just gets easier and easier to continue to hit snooze. Move your phone 10 feet away and urgently put your feet on the floor and attack that actual action. So I think come up with a trigger word. Those words typically align somewhere along the way with urgency because we all need a little bit of urgent action to get our butts going and to create that positive momentum.
I love these conversations selfishly because I get to obviously invite and pick guests. Sometimes my team will get a bunch of emails and things like that, but I've never heard it and reading your book, but listening to you now, and that's what I love about when Zig Ziglar years ago talked about the repetition of, you don't read a book once or you don't listen, but he dates himself, to a cassette once. He would talk about the fifth, the seventh, the 10th time, but I have not heard it used the way you say a trigger word. And I've heard word of the month. We have a planner. We use word of the quarter. Obviously, going back to John, he's got a book out there, Word of the Year, and he's not the person that created that, but he took it to a different level. But the trigger word to me is so important because it's when you say it, hear it. I wear bands on my hand, so maybe that's a word where, okay, this is going to trigger me to do ABC or to not do ABC. And Craig Ballantyne, who I just interviewed, he taught me something else, which is the not to-do list. We all have our daily to-do list or weekly to-do list, and that we could probably talk for hours on that. But I had never heard that not to-do list, and I've never heard this trigger word perspective. So I just need to ask you, is it something that you created? Is it something that you kind of copied and pasted, or what led you to that concept? Because I think it's just so refreshing in many ways.
Yeah, what's awesome is this is the point. I'm a coach and I'm all these other things, but I'm a husband and a father first, Chris. This came from children. This is something that I've applied to my kids personally, and I've talked to other parents and other coaches and people. I've done it with players, athletes, other people that I've consulted with. I've had to do this with our children because just like adults, we're emotional creatures, and I've seen it with my children firsthand where maybe they're taking a competition, if it's sports specifically, they maybe have a bad play, and then I just see them on the court, on the field, whatever the situation is, they can't get out of their own mind. So I kind of came up with this thing, hey, what is one thing you can control? Your effort. Doesn't matter what just happened in that play. So you'll hear me in the stands. I'm never going to yell at officials. I'm never going to criticize play, but I will yell 2 things. I will yell effort and attitude out of the stands. I'll be that dad. I have no problem doing that. So for me, if it's the trigger word, I've used it with my kids, and I've talked to other parents who have applied this with great success. And it's when you see them in that moment, hey, effort, that's all you can control. In that moment, then you hit that switch. That trigger comes in, it resets you, it rebalances, and it refocuses you. You're allowing that athlete, yourself, your child, to reframe the situation. Now it's not about what just happened, the bad play, the embarrassment, whatever, the failure, the short-term micro failure. It's about the setting. Reset, reframe. Now you can control your effort. You get all that control back in that moment. You can control what happens next. And what beautiful thing is that, because you can actually dictate the next outcome, which is much more important than what just happened.
I love that. One of the things that I do with the teams I get to work with early on in the season or preseason is we literally go up on a whiteboard, whether I'm doing it or one of the players or coaches, and we list our CTCs, control the controllables. And we all know what they are, but when you actually do that exercise as a team, as a coach, it's really interesting because when you look at the two lists side by side, what I do are we list all those things we can control, those things we have 100% control over, and then all those things that you have zero control over. And when you actually physically see them and sometimes hearing somebody else say them, I just love, added effort and attitude, energy. There's obviously a bunch of different things that you can, but it's those little things that from what you do that none of those things will ever show up in a box score. No one is ever going to say, hey, Tom Brady just, he wins the effort award for this last game. No, they're going to talk about, his fourth quarter comeback. They're going to talk about his, completions. They're going to talk about those things. And that's all fine and good. But I always challenge my athletes and my coaches, what are those things that we can control throughout the season that are not going to show up in a box score, but are going to be a huge potential for why we do win a game or don't win a game. So I love that. And again, it just goes back to saying similar things, but saying them a little bit differently. But that's how you learn and grow.
Absolutely. There's an intentionality. And when you do control the controllables, like you said, Chris, you bring power back into that situation. When you're worried about the things that you cannot control, you're giving away the power over what you can actually have an impact on in that moment.
And I'm going to botch the quote, but I just read it a couple of weeks ago that most, like 90+% of the things that we worry about and we stress about don't even come to fruition. But that's what we do in sports and in life, right? Yes, you need to be prepared and you have to plan ahead and have a game plan in whatever your quote unquote game is. But if you're spending more of your time, energy, effort, and attitude just stressing out about, 412 things that most likely aren't going to happen, you're going to miss that ball or that play or that sale right in front of you.
Correct. It's the Charles Swindoll quote, and I know you're a faith-based person, Chris. It's life is 10% what happens to us, but it's 90% our attitude around it. And it's control what you can. So if you're negatively thinking about something that's 10% chance of happening, get out of your mind, get back in, reset, refocus, reframe, use a trigger word, whatever it is, and then reset your mind so that you can go forward and control the other 90% of the things that you actually can.
I love that. Fun question we ask each guest, and I'm actually really excited to get your response. I know that famous Jim Rohn quote, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." If I could grant you dinner tonight with any 5 people, dead or alive, that you could level up from, who would you pick for your 5?
Oh, first of all, Jesus. I'm a faith-based person, number one. Some of the great leaders in the history of mankind. Winston Churchill would probably be on that list from a leadership perspective. Shoot, 5. It's hard. I got 5,000 rattling through my head right now, Chris. Some of the other people, I think the great Roman civilization was really fascinating, but some of the Stoics, throw any Stoic that you want. I think we can learn from all of them. Ryan Holiday does a great job of creating some parallels there. And then a couple ones selfishly, I mean, from a sporting perspective, I've never met Michael Jordan. I would love to sit down with Jordan just to pick his mind and that mentality of what he had, because I love how he talked about earned confidence. And then if I had to pick one more, let's see, 5 would be give me someone that was going through when America was created, whether it's George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, give me someone, because at that time, you got to think these people were going through an incredibly challenging thing where they were basically outlaws. I mean, they were doing something that was punishable by death. And foundationally, looking back now at what they've created, and we can complain, and a lot of people do, and say this country is this or that. We're pretty awesome, at a lot of things too. We have freedom, and we have the freedom to be honest and to help people, if you choose to do so. And there's a lot of good happening throughout our country too. And I want to make sure that we remember that. But those guys and women, when they were fighting for what they were fighting for a belief. I would be fascinated to sit down and actually be able to pick their brain about how did you go about this process, because we take for granted what that means, but we wouldn't be all sitting here with the freedoms that we have if they hadn't chosen to do that.
Yeah, I think from generation to generation, we obviously learn, grow, adapt, and I think it is so interesting how those Stoics today are coming. I don't want to say back into the light, but it's so many people, and obviously Ryan Holiday is not the only one. There are people that have been talking about the Stoics for decades and decades, but to me, the crazy part is it's the foundation of that many centuries ago that are still just as poignant today in 2025. And that's what I think people miss out on sometimes with social media is you see these immediate results or successes, but you're missing out on, yes, like you did this or this person achieved that, but they also spent this amount of time behind the doors, behind, when the lights were not on. I have to ask you this question because selfishly, but also maybe for our listeners too. You can't answer your book, so your book does not count. But have you read anything recently, or are you currently reading something that you would recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, the most recent one that I finished was The Infinite Game, Simon Sinek. And then the one I'm actually reading right now, Five Types of Wealth, Sahil Bloom, a phenomenal book. I think both of those, The Infinite Game, just from, structure, it's unique timing for me selfishly because I'm taking on this new role with a new organization, Chris, and looking at it. The cool thing that I'll throw out there, crime rates, right? What does football have to do with crime rates? Crime rates in the city of New Orleans go up when we lose on the following Monday, and they go down when we win. You don't think that there's a longer term objective here? You don't think that we're going to lean into that? I'm already passionate enough about winning because I just love the thrill of competition. But I want our community to understand we're going to work our butts off and our players to understand that we have a greater impact, not just in the community, because our guys have an incredible platform, our players, our coaches, everyone. We can inflict positive change in the community as a mass, but also you just look at what we're doing. We're not just showing up to play football games. There's a greater cause here. We have generations of fans. You go to a game, and if you can hand a football to a young boy or a young girl, and they're sitting there with their father, mother, grandmother, grandfather, you're literally dealing with generations of memories that are formed around what we get to do on a daily basis. There's a greater good. So The Infinite Game was one that made me think of that. And The Five Types of Wealth by Sahil is a phenomenal book as well that I'm about halfway through right now.
That was a selfish question as well, because I think, success leaves clues, and other people that are doing things successfully, whether your field or not, they're always tuning into other things. And I appreciate that. So I wanted to ask you, for our listeners, anybody who wants to connect with you, follow you, find out more about you as well as your book, and you also have a YouTube channel. Wanted to give you a minute or so just to please share that for those people that are interested in finding out more about you.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's Ted Rath Strength Coach is the YouTube channel. And then all socials on that, it's usually Ted Rath Strength Coach or just Ted Rath, whether you're on LinkedIn or whatever you guys are on, but on pretty much all of those. And then tedrath.com, for speaking and stuff that I can do in spare time, things like that are available there. But yeah, really the book is available on Amazon and anywhere else you can buy books online is probably the easiest way to get it. But the YouTube channel, we're trying to put out some good words. We've done some youth related sports stuff. If you do have children or if you're an athlete at any level, we're trying to put out some good information there. And then some stuff based around football. We're going to continue to do some creative stuff around that. So look for that to keep growing.
I love that. And then last question we have for you is same question we ask everybody, is if you have some parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
Yeah, I think as you go into this, once again, I'll tap on something that I said, urgency. I think it's something where I've applied this in two ways too. It's not just always urgent action. There are some times in our lives where I've applied urgent patience, especially going back to being a father or being a parent. If you're a mother or a father sitting at home, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's times where I have to urgently take a breath and take a step back, before you react rather than respond. You want to respond in a healthy and a loving manner rather than react in that short-term urgent burst. So I think for me, urgency though, and then the other side of it is urgent action. If you have goals, if you have, maybe it's a fitness goal, maybe it's a job related goal, you want to crush it and get that next promotion, urgency will help you get there. And I think keeping that in mind with all of our actions, with all the things that we can control, that's one method that we can get there, is applying urgency in some of those situations.
I think that is a fantastic way to finish up today's episode. And for our listeners, if you want a good book, I would highly recommend you grabbing a copy of Ted's book, but then please follow him. And as well as he said, if you are an athlete or a parent of an athlete, check out his YouTube channel. So I wish you nothing but the best this year. Do you guys play the Giants this year?
We do not this year, not there.
Okay.
I got to check if we're home.
I was about to say, other than if you play the New York Giants, which it's now irrelevant. But no, I appreciate you jumping on here, and I hope that you and I can connect again soon.
Absolutely. No, Chris, I really do appreciate this opportunity. I look forward to keep following you.
Thank you for listening to episode number 538. I truly enjoyed speaking with Ted, and I'm confident that you were able to take away some things that you will be able to implement in both your personal and professional life. Ted shared something very simple yet powerful in his parting words, and I would like to repeat those. Ted suggested the idea of urgency, and both urgent patience and urgent action. The common denominator is urgency. I know we all have things coming at us quicker today than ever before. But ultimately, we need to hold on to that idea of urgency and how important it is to take that first step. I hope you go out and crush your day today, and remember, believe, and act upon our motto. We rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.